All right, welcome everyone. Today we have Michael Ox as well as Aiden presenting the building Dynamics 365 bots with the Azure bot framework and Lewis. So we're going to get some good AI insights and how we can bring that to the Dynamics 365 platform from Michael and Aiden. Michael and Aiden are both Microsoft MVP as with the business applications area. So they are quite experienced and diverse in this type of information. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you all know today that we are recording, and you may view this recording or share this recording on the XRM virtual or from the XRM virtual page. We post all of our meetings and make them available for download so you can view them at any time. You can always be informed as to upcoming events on that website, thexrmvirtual.com, as well as through our Twitter account at xrmvirtual. XRM Virtual is very interested in having new members always speak. I think this is maybe, Michael, your first time, and perhaps Aiden as well. But we're always interested in having additional people. So it's great for people to submit your own sessions or ideas, or if you don't want to present yourself, then we always want to hear your topic ideas. Julie's challenge has always been to ensure every topic gets covered, and I don't think she's failed yet. So every time somebody makes a request, we do try to find a speaker and have been successful in doing so in the past. Our next XRM virtual meetings are next October 2nd, and how to do everything wrong with authentication. And October 23rd, looking at Dynamics 365 and Azure, a partnership in the experience, depth, and exciting growth with Anne. And then we have on November 6th, Azure Functions, integration scenarios with Dynamics 365 from Salem. There are a lot of upcoming conferences as we enter the fall here in North America. Dynamics 365 Saturday, which actually Michael and Aiden are attending and help put on in Washington, D.C., is on September 21st and September 22nd. I believe they're having a hackathon on the 21st. The next big Microsoft conference is Microsoft Ignite, which is being hosted in Orlando and taking place this September 24th to the 28th. So there will probably be a lot of different information coming out of that meeting or that conference there about the Dynamics platform, as well as all the other Microsoft services. The next really big CRM UG summit is being held in Phoenix, and that will be taking place October 15th to the 18th. And then Extreme 365, next US conference will be in Austin, and that will be taking place between December 3rd and December 7th. And I am going to hopefully pass it over to Michael, who we look to have briefly lost. So hopefully he's there. He is. So we'll just make him presenter again. And hopefully, Michael, you're back with us.
I'm back now. Sorry about that.
No worries. You just came perfect timing, actually. So without further ado, Michael and both Aiden will take us through building Dynamics 365 bots with Azure Bot Framework and Lewis. So over to you, Michael, and just go ahead and present your screen when you're ready.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep, everything looks great.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Colin. Thank you for hosting us. I'm Michael Ox. I'm Director of Product Development at Cobalt here in Alexandria, Virginia. I have Aiden Cascella with me. He is President and Founder of Cascella Solutions. And I've got the majority of this presentation is going to be demo. I've got about 5 slides that we're going to run through really quickly. We've got a lot to show, and this is actually a pretty fun presentation. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know I enjoy doing it. Bots are kind of my side project that I like to work on in my spare time. So it's always fun to kind of help others get a sense of what they are, and how they can be leveraged with Dynamics 365. So what we're going to do today as far as an agenda, I'm going to, at the beginning, just level set for anybody who's not familiar with the bot framework and Lewis. We'll talk about what they are, We'll talk about why we should build bots for Dynamics 365. And then, we'll jump right into a demo, and then we'll have a little bit of question and discussion after we're done. That sounds good. All right, so jumping in, what is a bot? So, Google, we have our standard Google definition of a bot here. Computer program designed to simulate conversations with human users, especially over the internet. Fair enough. However, for the developer audience, specifically the Dynamics developer audience here, really what a bot is for you and I is, an augmented command line interface. It's basically text in, text out, and it's augmented in certain ways. It's augmented by AI, giving us sort of plain language, and that's the Lewis side of things, giving us the ability to parse plain language. You can do a few things with, the text out side of things by, using Markdown to create hyperlinks, to do, bolded text. You can also do what is known as cards. So not just text, on a screen. Sometimes if you want a button with a picture and some text next to it, you can do that as well. So, but essentially the idea behind these is that they are text in, text out. It's a command line interface. But the great thing about it is that it will run on your users. It will run on the applications that your users are already using. So, Facebook, Skype, Slack, you can deploy these bots pretty much to, a device, your users' devices, super simply. You can build them. They're really quick and easy to build. And, they're very easy to maintain as well, because they're basically just a web app up in Azure. So you're not building native apps, but you're able to get apps out to your customers, really quickly using the bot framework. So why bots? Satya Nadella said that bots are the new apps. This was at Microsoft Build in 2016. It's right there. It says March 30th, 2016. I was there with Aiden at that Build conference. And when they actually announced the framework, it was, I remember, Aiden actually leaning over to me and being like, hey, this would be a really cool thing to build, Dynamics app on. But why are they the new apps? Well, basically what I was mentioned earlier is that for us, for partners, Microsoft partners, building native apps it's time consuming. It's also very expensive to do. You need to consider the platform that you're building it for, whether it be iOS or Android. You need to be able to build for multiple platforms. The great thing about bots is that you don't have to have that consideration. You're basically building an Azure web app that you deploy into Azure, and the messenger apps that are out there will basically consume your bot and surface that information directly on your users' devices. So it's a great way to get a mobile app spun up really quickly, and the platforms are evolving so that they can do more and more things. So it's that augmented command line interface is evolving into to allow you to do more complicated sort of user experiences. So the bot framework architecture, this is what we're going to look at today. Basically, what I was saying previously, we've got, over on the left-hand side of your screen, you've got a bot web service, which is just a standard MVC type web app that's deployed into Azure. You write your code there, you deploy it, and everything else is kind of handled for you by the bot framework. You've got the bot builder SDK. You've got some services that you can hook into, obviously. So natural language is the one we're going to look at primarily today. Aiden's going to run through configuring a Lewis application. You've got the translation, vision and face APIs and things like that you can also integrate with. But essentially everything to the right of that little circle that says your bot code is handled by Microsoft. So the great thing is that you can focus strictly on what your bot is supposed to do, and you don't have to worry about everything to the right of it. The translation service is an interesting one. It was actually originally it was included in the bot connector service, and the translation was done automatically. They ended up, I think that was in version 1. They ended up removing that when they went straight from version 1 to version 3, so that people could do their own or use their own translation services. So just a little bit of history there. Over on the right are the channels, so the different ways that you can surface your bot. This may be a little bit old. There might be some other ones that have been added since this list. The ones that we're going to look at today specifically is direct line, and we're going to look at also how to debug it locally using the bot framework emulator. All right, and that's it. As far as slides go, I'm gonna let Aiden take over. This was the image that was posted to Twitter. I had to add it to the presentation because it's awesome. So I'm gonna let Aiden take over, and he's going to show you guys a little bit about Lewis, and then he's gonna hand it back to me, and I'm gonna show you the bot framework and building a bot. All right.
Oh, hello, everybody. This is Aiden Costello. And as Mike mentioned, I'm going to be showing you the language understanding AI from Microsoft. Lewis is, it's a really fantastic way to, that Microsoft allows us to take normal text and convert it into a structure that we're able to use in other places. Programmatically lets us parse that in an easy way. So what we're going to do is build a super basic language parser using Lewis, and then show how that leads into building your own bot. So this is Lewis's website. I think this is practically free, if not completely free. And we're going to do it from the ground up. The app that we're building, like I said, it's going to be a little limited because we only have so much time and so much data to feed into it. But they get really, really accurate very quickly, and obviously, the more you give it, the more it has to learn from. So Lewis, the language parser, has a few main things that we care about. There are intents, entities, and utterances. And utterance is any phrase that you give it to parse. And intent is what the person wants to do, when they give that utterance. And an entity is like a variable. So if you say, text Mike, I'm on my way, your intent would be that whole sentence is the utterance. The intent is send a text message, and you have a couple of entities there. One is the recipient, who is Mike, and then the other is the message that you want to tell that person. So let's build that example out. First, we're going to create our new intent, which would be to send a text message. And we'll create two new entities. Recipient and the message. And there are a handful of different types. Hierarchical is for things like name. You have a name which is composed of two parts. There's a first name and a last name. And we'll actually see that in the bot later. And there's some other here, but we're going to go with simple to keep it simple. So we have our message and recipient, and we can go to our send text message intent. And now we want to train it up with a couple examples. So these are the utterances that people would pass in. We want to provide as many as possible real world examples of what people would say to drive that intent. So let's say I'm on my way. Message Bill, I'll be there. Tell Colin, sorry for dropping off the Skype. So I'm just going to do these three. Pretty straightforward. And it has no idea what these words are. As far as the AI is concerned, it's just all text. So what we can do is tag different parts of the sentence with different with the different entities that we've provided. So in this case, Colin is going to be a recipient. I'll just do all the recipients: Colin, Bill, and Mike. And the message is going to be the second part here. And in my examples, they're all going to follow the same, same kind of structure, but that's really due to my lack of creativity and not a limit on the AI. So we've tagged a few things here, and in order to have it get any knowledge about what you've told it, we need to train it up. So we'll hit the train button. And the first one takes a couple seconds. It's usually pretty quick, and that's done already. And now we'll publish it up. Go right to production. That's how we do it. And publish. And publishing is complete. One of the things that's really cool about the publishing option is you can include the Bing spell checker. So if I want to tell somebody something but I misspell it, Bing would recognize what I actually meant to say there and then substitute the right word in. So it makes it even more accurate. When you publish your app, you end up with a URL. I'll open this up. And this is the URL for the AI service. And at the end here, it's tough to see because I'm incognito, but at the very end where it says Q equals, that's where you would put the query that you're passing in, basically your command line text. So from here, let's say, tell Christine needs to stop at the store. So we know what that should be. And passing it into the AI now, it picked up it returns JSON, its interpretation of what I meant to say. And there are a couple parts here. It has the intent section. So how well does it score what it thinks I want to do? In this case, send text message had a 90 score from 0 to 100, and none, which is like everything else, very low. So in this case, it is really confident. It's not really a percentage. It's sort of like a weighted score. And then it also has the entities, and the entities it fills out however many it could match up for the intent I had. And this time it actually got it exactly right. The message is I need to stop at the store, and the recipient is Christine. And you can see in both cases, it didn't really have an accurate, it wasn't too confident about what it picked. It got it right, but it's not really sure that it was right. But we can improve that. And what's great is that the more real world data you get, the better you can fine tune this, for how people actually use it. So we can review the utterances that came in, and this shows the one that just hit the API. You see, tell Christina to stop at the store. It thinks that I wanted to send a text message, which was correct. So I can tick that off and say that it was accurately aligned to that intent. Now it shows up as one of the examples here. And I can train it and publish it again. And now when I query for it, I'll do a slightly different query, but I'm going to keep the same structure. Say, Kristen. You stop at the gas station. It doesn't really matter what you put in because it interprets it the same. So send text message, entities, it's a little more accurate, and it's pretty sure that's the recipient. We have a score of 88 there. So you can see, with only a handful of examples, even less than what they suggest is the minimum, we're able to build up pretty quickly an accurate parser for language. So it's a little tedious the way that we looked at it, and there are some shortcuts that you can do. Let's say that we wanted to, all the utterances right now are tell and message. Some other people might say text this person. So we don't want to have to rebuild the fact that text, recipient message, and that means the same thing as all these other things. So what we can do is build a phrase list. So a phrase list is essentially just saying that this pool of words, they all mean the same thing. Treat them exactly the same. And what that does is it really lets you expand the pool of data that you have, or it lets you really improve the application of the existing data you have, so you can use it in much better ways. So this will be kind of our text message group of phrases. And we'll just start with text and add that. And when we do, we can ask for recommendations. So what else is close to this? Maybe we'll put in texts. None of these really apply to text messages, but we'll also put in tell and message. And it keeps giving us recommendations. But I like that. So now we've added text to our grouping. Save this. Takes a second to persist. Train, publish it. And now when we go through and we do a query, we should be able to say, or we can say, text like almost there, and it picks up that text as being identical to message or tell in the context of what we're building here. So it's highly confident that by saying text, I want to still send a text message. Obviously, the recipient and message, it got correct as well. It's highly confident about those. So it's great because as you get more terms for the same action, and as the language evolves, or if you get into different regions and they have their own local terms for things, you can build that out and expand it very quickly, and really add a lot of accuracy to your parser. And the last thing I want to show you is adding a new intent based on what we have. So we already have a text message. Let's say I also want to add email, and those are essentially the same thing. You have a recipient, you have a message, and there's not really a whole lot more than that. So we can create a new intent to send the email. And we'll keep this super simple. And single utterance will be email Russ. Can't make it on Thursday. Can't make it. And that's going to be the only intent I give it. But what's great is that the entities that we're using elsewhere carry over to all your intents. So this message and recipient that we've defined, we don't have to rebuild those for each type of thing we have. So we can take this, we can say now we have a new send email, same logic. Really the only difference from the parser's perspective is this email. So let's publish that and see how that goes. and it picked up. It's most confident that I want to send an email. Not a great score, but it did pick up the message. Doesn't have the recipient, but it gives us a good start. And so now we're able to kind of broaden the functionality that we have, reuse the intents, reuse all any utterances that we have already, and really add a lot of new functionality. So as this applies to our Dynamics bot, this is the language understanding that Mike built for that we're going to see today, and the one it actually uses. And we have our intents, things like create, find, update, and these are all actions that you would take in CRM or in Dynamics. And then the entities are, entity name, contact name, things like that. So if we look at our, say, create, and look at some of the utterances here, we say it's create entity type, first name, last name. So obviously that would look like create contacts, Michael Ox, Emmeline Ox, and we can dig through and see create lead, create a new phone call named this, send, same thing with email, send entity type to person. So using the intents, entities, utterances, we're able to take natural language that somebody would say and programmatically come up with easily come up with a way to query CRM for what they want, either create records, delete, update, and so on. And that's where Mike's going to show you.
Thanks, Aiden. So that's a good segue into the the bot framework, and what we're gonna the rest of the time that we're gonna have today is gonna focus on. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you the CRM bot that was built based on this Lewis model. Show you that first, and then what we're gonna do after that is I'm gonna show you an open source project that we put out that's a little bit dumbed down. The CRM bot is also open source if you're interested in looking at the full source code for that. But the sample we're going to look at today is kind of a dumbed down version using the same Lewis model as the CRM bot does. So I'm going to go head over to my sandbox environment. And I need to sign Aiden out here. And the way that the CRM bot is surfaced inside of Dynamics is through a dashboard. So if we go to our Dynamics 365 assistant here, is that not the one where we have that? So this is essentially the bot that I'm gonna walk you through building today. One thing you'll notice immediately is that it, without any input, as soon as the page loaded, it actually went out and it logged in. So this is essentially an iframe. There's JavaScript behind this web resource inside of Dynamics that does the authentication for you. But one of the kind of cool things is that you can initiate, you can kind of communicate with the bot without actually the user typing anything in. So as soon as it loaded, it realized that it needed to log in to the bot application in Azure. It did that. It actually went out and did the Azure AD authentication, and now it says I'm logged in, and I can actually type a command. So if I say how many leads were created last month, it's going to come back and tell me that it found 10 leads. So that's good. And if I say how many leads were created this month, it found 0 leads. Okay, so pretty straightforward. However, there's a lot going on behind this. The first thing to notice here is that the language parser is taking care of identifying what it is that we're searching for. So leads, I can also say how many contacts were created last month. But it's also, and here we go, there's our 13 contacts that were created. There's not a lot of, this is kind of a demo org, so it's got demo data in it. But the other thing to notice is that it's actually parsing the date times, and that's one thing that Aiden didn't go over. There are a couple of built-in entities inside of Lewis, and one of them is a date time entity. So it will actually translate last month, it will translate last year, this month, this week, into a date time for you. And we're going to look at how you actually do that, in code here in a second. But pretty interesting, functionality to use sort of plain text. You can also type in a specific date, and it would be able to parse that as well. So I'm going to back out of here, and I have the links to the GitHub repository in the slide deck, but I will show you where that is right now. If you go to the CRM lab, and you go to repositories, there's a Dyn 365 sample bot here. There's also the CRM bot. That's the full bot that we built. This is the sample bot, so you can download that and to get started. But what we're going to do right now is I'm going to actually show you how to provision a bot in Azure. I'm going to show you what configurations you need to set up, and then I'm going to show you how you would take the sample bot and essentially deploy it into your own Azure instance. If we have time, I'm going to also show you how the single sign-on works inside of Dynamics 365. This could be a pretty cool, one of the things that I was thinking about leveraging here is when the custom control framework becomes available, having bots that can basically query data inside of Dynamics and, do a seamless sort of plain language way of filling out fields on the form and things like that. So it'd be good to show you guys the, how that single sign-on works kind of seamlessly so that people don't have to retype their credentials or click a button in order to sign in. All right, so I'm going to head over to Azure. And that's fine. I'm going to create a resource. I'm going to go ahead and create this under a different account. There's a lot of signing in and signing out when you're using multiple accounts. Okay. All right. So create a resource. I want to create a bot. Specifically, we're creating a web app bot. This is, like I said, it's going to deploy a web app to Azure, just like any other web app you would build for Azure. And we'll go ahead and create that. We're going to call this XRM sample bot. Now we'll put this in demo subscription, and we have another resource group here, and central, that's fine. App name, XRM sample bot. You can choose a template here. So there's a couple of different templates that are provided by Azure. So basic, this is just a kind of a echo bot. It will tell you what you said. There's forms. We're not going to look at forms today, but they're pretty cool. It's basically for collecting information just like you would on a web app form, first name, last name, things like that. You can quickly collect information using a form. There is the language understanding, the Lewis template, question and answer, as well as the proactive, which is a bot that will react to Azure functions. But we're going to start with the basic C# bot. There's also, obviously, you can do this in C# or Node.js, and we're working with the V3 SDK. The V4 is in preview right now, so there's more features available or pretty soon with the V4. All right, I'm gonna leave the Azure storage as it is. We're gonna create a new one. It's gonna provision an app for me in Microsoft with an app ID and a password, and I'll go ahead and click create here. All right, and while that's spinning up, I'm going to head over to Azure Active Directory so that we can set up our app for single sign-on with Azure Active Directory. So if I go under app registrations, and I'll do a new app registration, and this is XRM sample bot. I'm going to specify a sign-on URL, and for now, I'm just going to set this to localhost. Actually, no, I think I'm going to do XRM sample bot.azure websites. Go ahead and create that. All right. So I'm going to copy our app ID for our Azure app, app. And I'm going to go to properties. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to be multi-tenanted. So, if you were creating a bot for your internal Dynamics, staff use, you wouldn't necessarily need to use the multi-tenanted. However, if you're building a bot that you're going to distribute out on AppSource or something like that, you need to have a multi-tenanted setup for the app in Azure Active Directory, and that allows people outside of your company to authenticate through Azure Active Directory using your app. So I'm going to set that as multi-tenanted. And I want to set this to, this is going to actually be /home/authorize, and we'll see what that is here in a minute when we look at the code. So this is essentially the page that will do the authorization inside of our bot application. If we go to require permissions, we need to add permissions for CRM Online in here. That shows up, usually shows up right at the top. It does not. Oh, CRM Online, we'll select that. We're going to select delegated permissions, Access Dynamics 365 as an organization user. And we're good there. The one other thing that we need to do is set up a key. And we'll say that never expires. And once you save this, we'll copy that off. So there's our key. All right. We need to grab one more thing from Active Directory, and that is our ID for our tenant. If we go under Properties and we copy off Directory ID, and this is nothing special, related to the bot framework. This is essentially setting up a Dynamics 365 single sign-on with Azure Active Directory. So all of these steps would apply to any kind of application that you were building and deploying that wanted to single sign-on with Dynamics and pull data and write data to Dynamics. So All right. So I think we have everything that we need. Let me just double check my notes here. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. So hopefully our bot is up and running now. Deployment succeeded. If we head over to our bot, we've got a brand new bot and we can actually test it. So like I said, this is a pretty dumb bot. It doesn't do much. It just spits back what we tell it. Give that a second to spin up. And I can say, hello, bot. Like I said, it tells me what I said. If I say, thanks, bot. The one thing to notice here, that is interesting, an interesting part of this bot is that it's keeping the state. So it recognizes that that was the second thing you said. So server side, it's actually keeping the state of your bot. And if I say reset, this is an example of a confirmation. So now, now we're getting into the augmented command line interface where we actually have buttons that we can say yes or no, and that'll reset the count. So I can say it again, hello, and it goes back to 1. Okay, so that's essentially all we need to provision our bot inside of Azure. I'm gonna head over here to the app service settings. And I'm going to copy off a couple more values that we need specific to the bot. And what we need to grab is our app ID that Azure provisioned for us. We need to grab our app password that was also provisioned for us. And then we need our Azure Web Storage. So there was a storage account that was also created when we created our bot. And then bot ID. Okay. So I already downloaded the sample bot from GitHub. I'm going to pop the solution open. And we'll start to look at a little bit of code here. All right, so let's go to start with, let's look at the message controller. So every bot has a messages controller. This is the primary controller class for your bot's messages. So anything that comes into your bot goes through this controller. You can see it comes in with an activity type or an activity message. If we just kind of start to dig into this code a little bit, you can see there are different types of activities. So there are messages, there are kind of system activities as well. If we scroll down here, you can see under handle system message, there's a typing message. So as your user is typing, you can actually you can give them feedback as they're typing, and you can also send a typing message back to your users, and that shows that little ellipsis to know that the bot is thinking. There's a couple other things like ping. If you just want to test to see if your bot is up and running, you can send an activity message or a message of type ping. But we're specifically concerned in this block of code with messages of type message. And you can see we're retrieving chat state. We're doing some stuff here where we're parsing for a CRM URL. And it's looking to see if we know the organization URL. If we don't, what it's going to do is very politely send back an activity to the client that says, hi there, before we can work together, you need to tell me your Dynamics 365 URL. Otherwise, if it doesn't have an access token, basically if it's not single signed on, it will prompt for login. And then all the way down here at the bottom, and this is all the prompt for login stuff, all the way down here at the bottom. Otherwise, if we're already authenticated, it's actually going to pass it to a Lewis dialog. And the Lewis dialog class looks like this. We have a model specified up here. You can get these values out of the Lewis application that Aiden was showing earlier. And then we have these methods decorated with the intent. So what Aiden was talking about earlier when he had his send message intent, we had our create intent, we had our send email intent. This is essentially how you in C# you decorate your methods to handle those specific intents. This happens to be the none intent. The only other one that this sample bot handles is the locate intent. So this is somebody's querying for a record type intent. The other controller that we have in here is our home controller. This is responsible for doing the authentication. This is where we get redirected to when the authentication handshake begins. So we get handed to the authorize. Ultimately, that goes over to Azure Active Directory, signs the user in, and then they get passed back to this to the login. Login starts with login and then ultimately gets handed back to authorize. And you can see essentially what we're doing is we're parsing out the access token, setting that on our chat state, and then spitting back a message that says, hey, thanks, you're logged in now. Try saying one of these commands. I'm going to go ahead and run this. How are we doing on time? Getting a little close here. All right. The one thing I didn't show you was what we do with all those values that we pulled off. So when you download the solution from GitHub, there's going to be, all of these values under the app settings are going to be blank. But essentially what you do is you plug in all of that information that you copied out of Azure when you were setting up the bot. So Microsoft App ID, which is our app ID that we copied off here, app password, there's our app password, Azure Web Job Storage, that was another value we copied out. CRM client ID, this is the Azure AD application ID. So here's our AD application ID. Client secret was the app AD key that we created. And then we need our authority and redirect URLs. So in this case, I have another bot already up in Azure that I'm going to show you. But essentially, this is your Azure web app /home/authorize. So that's your authorize handler controller. And then your authority here is your Active Directory tenant ID. So you can see this is, this URL is the same. What you would basically replace is, the AD tenant ID there. And then down here is our auth URL. Same thing. This is a point to your app up in Azure. All right. I'm going to go ahead and deploy this. And failed on me. Just give me 1 second. Did this before. Let's build that. Publish. And this is a bit of a cooking show maneuver here because I I have another app already spun up from previously. So we kind of switched from XRM sample bot to Dynamics 365 sample bot or D365 sample bot here, just in the interest of time because we are about to run out of time. So I wanted to show you, kind of get through this for you guys. So I'm going to go take a look at Dynamics 365 sample bot. And we're going to test this in the web chat. Say hello. Did I not publish it in the right place? 365 sample bot. Publish. Yeah, not sure what's happening there. Oh, that's Dynamics 365 sample bot. I got a couple of these in here, so bear with me. It was D365. There we go. All services. All resources. D365. Okay. All right, so if I say hello here, this is going to prompt me, with that prompt basically to tell me the URL. So HTTPS, like, or I can say, Cobalt CRM.dynamics.com. And then it's going to ask me to do the single sign-on. So outside of Dynamics, this sign-on process is a little bit more cumbersome, but the same bot is running here inside of Dynamics, and we have that ability to use what's called back channels to do the authentication automatically. So you can see, let's let that go back there. Oh, doesn't like none. No, I must have confused it. But essentially what's happening here is we've got I go to messages controller here. We're looking at the from properties, and we're looking for a CRM URL inside of here. And what that's doing is it's creating a back channel reply, specifically telling the client to open a URL, and the URL it's telling it to open is the single sign-on authentication URL. So using back channels and the direct line JavaScript libraries, we can do that authentication seamlessly without the user having to actually do any input, because obviously they're already authenticated inside of Dynamics. All they need to do to authenticate the bot to Dynamics is go through the Active Directory single sign-on process. So on the client side, what that looks like is, let's take a look at that web resource. If we go to settings, under solutions, and we look at our sample bot here, we've got a web resource in here. Probably not the best way to look at it. It's not doing a whole lot. There's a helper method in here for get context, just to get the the CRM context. We're setting up a direct line channel to our bot, and then we're setting a bot chat.app with that connection. The one thing to notice here is that we're adding an extra parameter to the user who's sending this, and specifically that parameter that we're sending is the CRM URL. So what we were looking for back on the C# side in our bot code was that CRM URL coming in from the client. This bot connection post activity is kind of the on load of the bot. It immediately sends a message that says hello to the bot The bot then, looks for that CRM URL, which we have here. And if it finds it, it knows that it needs to do the authentication. It will send a back channel message back to the bot client, and these end up handling those messages that come back. So specifically, this is an activity. Is it the open URL event? We're just looking at the type and we're looking at the name. If it's open URL, then yes, it is. In which case we open a page, and the page that we open is the page that was sent from the bot. So that's, the kind of handoff between the single sign-on and the bot, getting that to be seamless without having to enter a URL, click a button, and then do the authentication. So with that said, we've got like 3 minutes left. So I'm open to answer any questions. I know it's a lot of stuff that we went through. It is a ton of content to try to get through in an hour, but I hope it was useful to you guys.
It was very good, yeah. No, that's very insightful in using the bots and getting started developing it all yourself. So, if anybody has any questions, Michael and both Aiden and I are sure happy to walk you through or answer anything that you guys have questions to now. So. I guess I have one for you, maybe Michael and Aiden. You guys are using this in a lot of client projects at this point, or able to implement these, or are these just fun things that you've been able to?
Right now it's kind of a side project. I'm looking to put the bot out on AppSource. I just haven't had the time to do it. I'm actually, it's in pretty good shape right now as far as functionality goes. Thinking that, like I said, a custom control bot might be kind of cool, as a way to quickly enter data or use more plain text language to enter data into Dynamics. So I think there are some potentials there. I've not implemented a bot on a client project yet.
Yeah. I'm also still waiting for that elusive chance as well. So.
Well.
All right. Well, thank you both very much. This has been very, very informative, as the comments are indicating. I will stop the recording. If you guys want to hang around and answer any questions as they come up, then that's awesome. But thank you very much for you both presenting today. It was very great.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone, for coming.